You know, for almost all of you who are listening, I have walked by faith where you will eventually, just simply because of age. Maybe in the end, at least I hope my words and my example may have helped you a little to learn what walking by faith might look like in your life. It's my prayer. It's why I do what I do. You know, over my lifetime, I have been influenced by a bunch of people, a lot of celebrity speakers and authors, people who have walked in ways that I could never have done. I've even rubbed elbows with many of them and count some of them as my personal friends. But that's not really who I'm thinking about right now. When I was younger, there were people I walked side by side with, people I knew, people who knew me back. And they were people who, they literally showed me how to live by the way that they lived and the wisdom they passed on to me. Things that they had learned, things that others had passed on to them. There was Jay, who saw potential in me and gave me my first job. There's Coach Stan. Man, he taught me how to learn from failure. There was a guy named Tex, which is really funny that I live in Texas now. This was out in California, but there was this guy named Tex. And maybe more than anybody else that I'd ever been around, he showed me what hard work looked like. And he demanded it from me. There was John Chase. Yeah, he was maybe the very first one who opened my eyes to maybe becoming a leader. Gayla showed me what compassion for the least of these looked like in a way that I'd never seen before. Dick was my absolute clearest example of how to put Jesus' kingdom first in my life and to teach others to do it also. There was Tim, who taught me to face my fears. And Chuck, he was the one that compelled me, absolutely pushed me to go deeper intellectually. And then there was Don. Maybe more than anybody else in my life story, he was the one who showed me what real worship actually looked like. And these were just some of them in my life. Speaking of those who have walked before us, we studied Hebrews chapter 11 last year. And it was where we learned that faith is the assurance of things that we hope for and the deep conviction of things that we cannot see. Wow. And the rest of Hebrews chapter 11 reminds those who are reading the letter, both the original readers as well as us some 2,000 years later, reminds them of the great examples of people who walked in faith in the past. Names out of their Jewish heritage like Enoch and Noah, and Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Moses, even Rahab the prostitute, and King David with all of his greatness and all of his failures. It's an amazing thing to realize that we are part of history. Check out this line out of Hebrews chapter 11. It's written about Abel, the second son of Adam and Eve. Yeah, he plays a story, a part of a story. It doesn't take up much space in the Bible. But he's remembered so much that he shows up thousands of years later in this list in Hebrews 11. And we read it in verse 4. It says this, "And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead." By faith, Abel, like all of those other ones, even the ones in my list, some of whom are also dead, Abel still speaks even though he is no longer on earth. His story still teaches us. His part of history still affects our part of history. And then we get to the words in chapter 12, the very beginning. It says this, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." I love that line. Therefore, since we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. A cloud it's this dense mass. And the author of Hebrews says there's this dense mass of witnesses that have gone before us. Growing up, and even to this day, often that line, the cloud of witnesses that we are surrounded by, is often depicted as like those that are sitting in a stadium, and we are now the ones on the playing field, and they are up there cheering us on. Well, that may be, but I don't think that's what this passage says. I don't think these are fans up there, cheering us on. I think this is a group. This is the group of men and women who have gone before us and who continue to witness to us, who teach us and model for us lives of faith if we will pay attention. They're the ones buried deep in history, buried deep in the history of the faithful, as well as those who walked right beside us. Those who continue to speak even though they are dead, like Abel. By their examples, by their stories, by their wisdom, by their lives of faith in the face of opposition and difficulty and struggle, by their lives of imperfection or weakness and overcoming. They are the ones, by word and example, who continue to tell us that we can make it, that we can live by faith as they have lived by faith. And since we have great examples of faith and perseverance according to this passage, I think it's pretty clear we're to do three things. It sounds an awful lot like a pretty standard sermon text, but really it's what I see in this passage. First, we are to throw off everything that hinders and get rid of sin that entangles our lives. This is the most elementary step that we take in our walk of faith in response to the grace of God. Nobody does this for us. We are to do it. This is how we are to own our faith. This is our responsibility to throw off the things that hinder us, the sin that entangles us. We have got to recognize that there is weight, the weight of sin and self-centeredness that drags us down. You know it. I know it. It's that baggage that we drag around. It can be stuff from our past or things we are right in the middle of right now. You know, when the original audience of the book of Hebrews heard this part of the letter, you know, to throw off everything that hinders, I can't help but think that their minds would have gone almost directly to the original Olympic Games, the things that were being done in Rome, people knew about worldwide. Athletes who trained for the Olympic Games originally, I mean, as crazy as this sounds, there's ample evidence that those games were performed by athletes who wore absolutely nothing when they participated, when they competed. They had literally thrown off everything that would hinder them in the race. Gosh, what a crazy picture that is. For us, he's not talking about clothing. No, this instruction in this letter is to get rid of the actions that miss the mark that God has set for us. Behaviors and thoughts and attitudes that are not consistent with the character of God or his revealed truth. That's what's called sin. And the plan is absolutely blunt. Get rid of it. Throw it off. Avoid it at all cost. The message is clear. Sooner or later, sin will cost, and we'll have to pay. Without God, there really is no awareness of sin. All of life is simply an opinion. But when we walk with God, we always have a standard. We'll always have a bar. The author of Hebrews then writes, we are to run the race with perseverance. Let me tell you this, heart to heart. Don't give up. The life of faith is not easy. I love this word, persevere. It is such an awesome word. We are to hold on. We are to keep going. We are to press on, to stand firm, to be determined, to be stubborn, to carry on, to hang on or hang tough, to stay the course, and so much more. I love those words. And I got to tell you, my heart breaks anytime I am drawn into looking back at kids who were always part of a youth group that I was privileged to lead for years and years and years as new kids came in every year, and then they would graduate and go off to college. When I saw them, when they were part of our group, their hearts, so many of them were on fire with their faith. But somehow when they gone off to college and entered into the life of adulthood, so many of them lost their resolve, gave up the fight, got out of the race. And I just got to tell you, the life of faith it's not a sprint. I mean, it sounds cheesy. It's not a sprint, but it is a marathon. And it's our responsibility to stay in the race. What is the race, by the way? It's the challenge to keep believing the promises of God and act on them. It's not easy to continue to live heroically, to live nobly, to live as a servant, to keep loving and giving and believing that the race is headed in the right direction. There are obstacles. However, what is easy is to let the sin of self-centeredness have its way, and then to become entangled in feelings of shame or betrayal or embarrassment, cynicism, despair, doubt. So what do you do? Well, I'll tell you what changed for me is understanding the next lines of this beginning of chapter 12 in Hebrews, verse 2. Check it out. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. You know, in the big picture, it is still pretty easy to have conversation about God. It's mystical, yeah, but it is not too weird. Still pretty socially acceptable, at least for us. Movie stars talk about God, athletes talk about God, politicians talk about God, civil servants talk about God. There's all kinds of talk about God. But honestly, it finally became more than just the knowledge of a mysterious God out there for me. It became about Jesus. Jesus, the exact, complete, and perfect representation of God. We studied that last week. And we're to fix our eyes. We're to train our eyes. We're to focus our eyes on his life, his suffering, his endurance, his compassion, his love, his mercy. He is the end and the completion of the great list of those who have gone before us. It is so easy to fix our eyes, focus our attention on anything and everything else. We live this out every day. Our head, our eyes, our heart, our emotions get turned so quickly onto anything and everything else. Sports, politics, oh my goodness. People are losing their faith every day because of what's going on politically. Entertainment, jobs, education, even our own family becomes a deterrent to fixing our eyes on Jesus. Sometimes it becomes the sins and shortcomings of others that we get fixated on, especially as it affects us. Even more often, we get fixated on our own baggage, our own messes, our own entanglements and struggles that weigh us down. Friends, there really is only one answer to walking by faith. It's to fix our eyes on Jesus. Today is not a how-to. Today, if you'll just take it from me, is an encouragement. Just keep your eyes and heart focused on him. When all of the other stuff starts to drag you down, go back to him. He is the best example of all. He is the goal. He is the end of the race. He is the prize. Fix your eyes on him. He's everything. And it's fascinating to me that the Lord's Supper, we are commanded to remember Jesus. Those were his last words to his disciples. Remember me. Keep your eyes focused this week. Till next time. See ya.